Second. There you go. Okay, let's give it a few minutes so people can join. Welcome everybody. We'll start in a few minutes. Just letting everyone trickle in here. Okay, we can get started. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining our Optimizing Your Microsoft Dynamics Ecosystem Tips, Tools, and Best Practices webinar, where you will learn all you need to know about your ecosystem, specifically in customer relation management, to streamline operations, improve productivity, and maximize use. If you are new and joining us here today, we are Imperium Dynamics, a proud Microsoft partner based in downtown Chicago, dedicated to bringing your vision to life within the Microsoft stack. We help organizations of all sizes achieve digital transformation, solving complex problems, and delivering long-lasting impact through the Microsoft Cloud solution, with a focus of increasing both the capabilities of people and the performance of businesses. Here is an overview of our agenda today, where we will talk about best practices, leveraging your Power Platform, maximizing usage, Imperium Dynamics co-managed services, as well as best practices for integration, and finishing off with the Q&A. But before that, a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, and after the webinar is over, you will receive an email with the link to access the recording. So feel free to revisit it or share with your colleagues. There will be a Q&A session at the end. So please feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A chat feature, and we'll address as many as possible. We will also be sharing additional resources and a copy of today's slide deck after the session, so you don't have to worry about taking detailed notes. With that in mind, let's get started. Joining me today, I have Shazar Khalid. Welcome, Shazar.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
And my name is Brittany Overa, a marketing specialist here in Imperium Dynamics, joining from our downtown offices in Chicago. So before we dive into the best practices, we have to acknowledge some common challenges. Managing a CRM like Dynamics is not just about implementation. It's about maintaining its efficiency and ensuring that your operation runs smoothly. For instance, you might be struggling with data overload, leading to inefficiency in managing day-to-day operations. Manual processes take up a lot of time that could otherwise be automated, while complex customizations and integrations often pose a technical challenge. Keeping your system healthy, ensuring regular updates, and maintaining security patches can also be a full-time job. The good news is that there's a lot of ways you can address these key challenges effectively. Shazar, could you please lead us to some of the best practices we can take for one CRM ecosystem?
Thank you, Brittany. Hi, everyone. I'm Mohammed Shazar Khalid. I'm a technical architect here at Imperium Dynamics. And today I'll be walking you through some of the best practices you can take in your Dynamics CRM, Power Platform, and other ways we can maximize its efficiency and utilize it the most. So among our best practices, I'd like to start with the first and foremost of having an environment strategy. So as Microsoft recommends and as we recommend, that you're supposed to have a development environment, a test environment, and a production environment within your tenant. The dev is where you do your development, test is where you would test your solution, and the production is where you would have your live application. This is the minimum most requirement that we suggest. Dev and test are both supposed to be sandbox, production is going to be production, and then later on, you can actually even add a UAT environment, which is a user acceptance testing environment, which you can expose to your client users to test that out. And there's also a SIT, standard integration testing environment you can make use of if you house any integrations which are require more complex operations. So beginning with an environment strategy and moving on to how you would make use of those environments is First is to know that you are only supposed to have unmanaged solutions in your development environment and managed solutions in your production and your test environment, or SIT or UAT. So the unmanaged solution should only live in your dev environment, and everywhere else it should be a managed solution. And moving on, then we have our use of proper security roles and teams. So when you have your environment set up and you have the proper solutions in the proper structure set up inside them, you also need to have proper security roles and teams, or the use of security roles and teams, because it prevents users from having access to everything, or some users having access they need. So if there's some data that needs to be visible to a certain user and some data that is not visible for a certain user, that is what is catered from through security roles and teams. If you grant every user the same security role, then that comes into question, where the visibility of data is not being properly utilized and the roles can see anything and everything. So proper use of security roles and teams. Teams is what you can add to your departments, based on your departments or within your departments, or users which are going to be doing the exact same thing, or they have the same exact tasks. They can be assigned to a team, and a security role can be, sorry, so it makes it easier for you to manage if someone is onboarded or offboarded, and all of them get the permissions that are needed. And then moving on, we have the use of custom tables where necessary. So necessarily, you don't need custom tables if your solution should fit the existing tables within Dynamics Power Platform. There's around 160 tables by default. So if your use case fits them, you should go ahead and use them and make custom forms for those tables. But in some cases where you're writing a completely custom use case and nothing maps to yours, you should use a custom table, so wherever necessary. And then comes a midpoint of where you want to use an account table, but your customizations are going to be so much that you would rather have your own account table. In that case, you should create your own table, replacing an existing original one. Microsoft recommends that you do not replace or replicate the account and contact tables because they're more mainstream. And even when you are using the existing tables, make sure that it's a main streamline table, that you're sure that it's not going to get deprecated in the future. And then after we have set our environment strategy, managed the solutions, made sure that we have the correct data structure, then we have the correct security structure of sorts, then comes more on the governance side. So as a base minimum, what you can have is a managed environment. So within your dev, test, and production environments, you can set the environment to be a managed environment, which gives you governance over your environment, where you can see how many orphaned apps are there, orphaned flows are there, which mean like applications or flows which do not have an owner, or it also grants you the access to see how many applications there are in total in that specific environment, and how many flows are there, and who's creating what, and how much data and capacity is being utilized. At a minimum level, it also shows you capacity without having a managed environment, but with a managed environment, it gives you somewhat the aspects that you would get with the next talking point, which is the Center of Excellence kit. So at a minimum, you should have a managed environment. Then we have our biggest and most important prominent thing, the Center of Excellence kit, which we highly recommend. As far as I'd say required in your tenant. That a Center of Excellence kit is Microsoft solution, which gives you complete control and governance over your tenant. So it's not just to one environment. You see all environments, all users, and you see how many orphaned applications are there, orphaned flows are there, who's creating what, which user has created how many flows, which user has created how many applications, which environments need attention in terms of capacity, which environments have a lot of overdue action items. And with the Center of Excellence, you also have your templates that you can set. So whenever someone gets onboarded, they have the access to your templates, like, okay, this is the company logo, this is the company banner, this is the theme you use when you create a model-driven app or when you create a Canvas app. which we'll get into later on. So with that, it helps as well. And in terms of security in Center of Excellence Kit, it allows you to select certain connectors that you allow and certain connectors that you block within Power Automate. There's around 1,500 something connectors right now, and they keep growing, and it will keep on growing. So if some connectors do not fall into your organization's policy, or some things that you do not feel are safe and secure, you can block them within the Center of Excellence Kit in your data policy. So you can set those up in your Center of Excellence Kit as well. So these are some of the overall general best practices that you should have as a minimum. There's a million more things we can get into and dive much more in depth in, but as a minimum, these are certain things that we recommend, or as I would say, required if you have a tenant in Microsoft Power Platform.
Amazing. So, talking about best practices, how do you effectively utilize Power Platform?
So that's a very good question. And the slide basically that when you come into the Power Platform, there's a million things you can do. You can do a lot of things, but how do you effectively use the Power Platform the most effective and efficient way? So you have Canvas apps, you have model-driven apps, and you have Power Pages. These are the kinds of applications you can create within your Power Platform. So knowing when to use what is a very good and effective thing to start with. So if you have something, if your use case is that your application needs to be public facing, that you have public facing application that it's going to be exposed on the internet, or the users are much, much broader, then you would create a Power Page, because that allows you to expose your application and data to the public, where it's a website and it can be an authenticated use, where it can be users who have accounts in your Azure AD, a Microsoft accounts, or it can also be like non-authenticated use based for the public. And if it's an application that's for your internal users, but it's a simple use case, you want to make it visually nice and appealing, and you want to have the ability to customize the interface with not much in-depth and very strong functions or methods running in the background, then the approach would be to go with the Canvas app, which is the usual and the way to go if you have a point of sale system, or like a feedback thing that you could run on a tablet or any machine within your organization that's internal, or ask users to fill in time entries, just submit their times, something simplistic. So which gives you the control of how you're going to design it. You would go for a Canvas app. A model-driven app is where we do all the heavy lifting in terms of data, because that is more focused in terms of functionality. So in a model-driven app, you cannot change the visual interface. It is navigation on the left and lists and your records on your main view. And what you can do with the model-driven app is that it gives you heavy access and the possibility to interact with your data. You can update, delete, edit, create all the records that you want. You can write custom JavaScripts for showing how it's displayed. You can have business process flows. If all of the Dynamics applications, which is customer service, sales, marketing, and we have customer voice. No, that's separate. But sales, marketing, and our customer service application and field service, all of that is based on a model-driven app. And then that's where everything actually comes to be and happens. And the model-driven app actually gives you the best way to interact with your data. So if you're doing a process application or something that requires heavy data usage, you would go for a model-driven app. And then coming to the second part, which is use of the Dataverse. So if you are planning to create your application from scratch and you want to pick a database, the best database to use within Power Platform and Dynamics is Dataverse itself. It is very safe, very secure, and the fastest database you can have within your Power Platform tenant. So unless you have a data warehouse, which is in Oracle or SQL or some other data warehouse which houses your data that you do not want to migrate, you should at least move your most consumable or hot and cold data, as we say, hot data within Dataverse. So the speeds are as fast as possible. The manipulation is as fast as possible. And basically, if you ever want to think of a database to use within Power Platform, you go for the Dataverse. And then the third part is also a very crucial part for businesses, which is use of Power Automate. So Power Automate isn't just automation in a simple sense, it is the entire automation you can think of. So any aspects that you want to do with your data, you would consider what processes can be automated, and some things that you're clicking through in a series of actions can even be an automation and the computer can do it. So you should try to look into your business and automate the processes that are digital and then can be automated. It doesn't necessarily even have to be within the Power Platform or within the Dataverse that the records you're dealing with, because the Power Automate that has like 1,500 or so connectors, as we mentioned previously, you can connect to a plethora of like separate outside third-party tools and access them or integrations with them. And you can even have like desktop flows, which is RPAs, where you would mimic how a user would go to a desktop and click on a certain icon and go forth and automate that process. So anything that can be automated should be automated for the most effective use of your Power Platform.
Great insight. So, with that, what would you say is the best strategy to maximize use?
Okay, so the best strategy to maximize use. So first we went to best practices, then we went for how to use it effectively. And now once you have all that set up and you're using everything effectively, how can you gain more from it? How can you maximize your usage? So to maximize that, the new buzzword, which everyone knows, is AI. But luckily and good for us that Microsoft, or Power Platform, has AI built in. It's called Copilot. So Copilot is available in each and every application now that Dynamics is offering, which is sales, marketing, customer service, field service. All of them have their own Copilots built within them, even Microsoft Teams. So they require licensing. So you would need to have that subscription turned on by a license. But in some licenses that you get for your Dynamics, Copilot is also included. So that is something you'll need to like look into your licensing with your Microsoft rep for. But within these applications, Copilots exist, which you can talk to about the record you have open, or what's going on in your application, or like what tasks do you have to, like if you're on a contact record in sales, you can ask what this contact record holds, like what their date of birth is, and other aspects that you would ask an AI natural language model. So that would help you maximize the output you can get out of your AI Copilot. There's also a Copilot Studio, which allows you to create your own AI chatbot. So if you want to manipulate data or have a custom table or some other process that you want to be done from a chatbot, then Copilot Studio is the way to go, where you actually create your chatbot, and in a natural language model, you can ask them to perform tasks, or it could be running automations in the background, or it could be even doing something simple as sending an email or reminding you of what's on your calendar. So there's a lot of ways you can use the Copilot. And the second part is uh, the most major part in your digital transformation journey, is that digital transformation only happens if you make manual or physical processes digital. So automating manual processes is a very key aspect in maximizing the usage of your Power Platform. So right now, if you have data in your database and you're trying to run automations on that, that's great. That's awesome. You're using Power Automate. But what we should strive to do is to find manual processes that we're doing on pen and paper or through some physical aspects that can be automated or brought to the cloud. So it not necessarily doesn't mean like using Power Automate to do it, but you could even transform them into an application or a chatbot. So that comes in for the digital transformation that you need to do. So take the most to maximize your entire Power Platform usage or your Dynamics usage is to identify manual processes or physical processes that you can actually digitally transform and get better results from them or faster results.
Great. So many tools, so many systems. What would you say is the best practice for integration?
Okay, so for integrations, there is a long list of things you can do, but we're going to cover the four things which are the most prominent ways, and it's a step-by-step way in how you should take it. So if we're trying to integrate with a third-party tool, which is not existent, or a third-party service, which is not in Power Platform, the primary way to check if there's a connector for it, if whichever tool you're using has written a connector in Power Platform for their services. So that's the primary use case. And that's the easiest way as well, that you go into your Power Platform and you check if there's a connector for whichever service you're going to use, what actions does that connector offer, and what you can accomplish from them. But if you wanted to take it up a notch, and let's say the connector didn't exist, but they had APIs for their services or their application, so you should use the HTTP connector within Power Automate to actually interact with those APIs and make post calls and get calls to get your services as an integration completely. Now, let's just say that even an HTTP connector isn't cutting it, and there's some higher level of APIs, like in authentication, you need to ring 3 APIs to get your token. Like there's a protocol set, like in medical systems, there's a FHIR protocol where you need to bounce between 2 or 3 APIs to finally get your access token and perform a number of validations by receiving hashes and tokens and so forth. So for that, you would go on and create a custom connector. So a custom connector, what it actually means theoretically is that you did what someone else did in step one, connector in Power Automate. So you made your own connector for your own use case based on their APIs. So that can be done interchangeably with an HTTP connector. Like you can create your own custom connector if you prefer it that way. But if it's a simple API where you're just, let's just say, getting a time or getting the city, which state the city is in. So one HTTP connector is fine. But moving on, a custom connector is the next step. But then on, even in a custom connector, it can pause or has like limitations of sorts or performance issues. So Power Automate itself has like a limit, like it has a 24,000, I believe, per day API limit or calls limit. If you plan on crossing that, or if you just want to have the fastest solution possible, this is where the low code ends and pro code begins. So you would write a plugin, and a plugin is written in C#. It's pro code. It has classes and childs and methods, and you would utilize that to write your integration, where you can use the APIs or any other aspects that you can integrate with the third-party service, and that would yield you the fastest and most performance efficient results, also the most customized results, because it's like pro code, you can code however you want it to be. So that's integration steps in order, like what steps you can take if you wanted to integrate with, and from easiest to, I wouldn't say they're difficult, they're just like cater to different use cases. So that is for integration.
Great. So we know managing your CRM can be stressful and demand a lot of your detailed time. That is why Imperium Dynamics created its co-managed services for Dynamics CRM. Our goal is to provide you with comprehensive support to ensure your CRM operates smoothly and efficiently. With our CRM, with our co-managed services, you benefit from tri-weekly alignment reviews and monthly platform strategy and goal calls, which can include project scoping, where we will define the scope of your project, deployment planning, technical reviews, where our experts like Shazer will conduct thorough reviews of your system's technical aspects and identify issues, as well as citizen development, supporting your internal team and developing solutions, user training, training your team on these new solutions, and integration design, when we will design and connect your CRM with other systems, ensuring a unified and efficient tech ecosystem. With our co-managed services, you gain access to expert guidance, streamline governance, and additional resources that complement your existing efforts. We help ensure your CRM system operates at a peak performance, allowing you to focus on what you do best, driving your business forward. So with that, we actually have a customer success story and how Imperium Dynamics helped Baptist Health, a prominent player in the healthcare industry. So Shasser, since you work closely on this. Can you give us on some insight on the issues and what you did to help them?
Of course. So this is where a key part is that our requirements or digital transformation can help people who are non-technical. So it is not something that directly relates to technical industry. So in Baptist Health, there were a clinic, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to have a more efficient or easier way for their nurses or frontline medical workers to create help desk tickets. So they have a help desk that, okay, I'm not able to access the account, the doctor is not able to see the report, this patient hasn't checked out, et cetera, so forth. So to streamline that and make that easier and more friendly, what we created for them, the solution was that we created a Power Virtual Agent or Copilot Studio chatbot, as it's called, which allowed them to create their help desk tickets to their ticketing system. It was Ivanti directly through the chatbot. So they would come and talk to the chatbot, like, I'm having this issue, I want to create a chat support ticket, and then the chatbot would ask them what kind of support ticket, what are the issues you're facing, and do you have any attachments to add to this ticket? And then it would create the ticket for them from the backend. So for them, it would be like just chatting to another person or just explaining the problem they had. And in the background, it connected and created their API, an Ivanti ticket through an API. So that is one process where to the nurses and frontline workers, it was very efficient. And what it also did was that utilizing generative AI within Copilot Studio, we had indexed certain documents that are of use and help to nurses and hospital staff and clinical staff of, okay, what's the number for this department, or where do I find this, and what do I do in this case? So the Copilot Studio had indexed those documents, and when they would ask a question in normal general language, natural language, the bot would give them the answer, which was like very useful for them, and they were very surprised and very happy about it. That AI was coming to help them and answering their questions of like, okay, what's the department on the third floor in this room? And it would answer like, okay, yeah, this is the billing department, or that is the X-ray area. So that is how this solution came to like progress their business and make their tasks easier. And we're still working with them on it, advancing it more, adding more features to it, because using a chatbot to just talk to and just ask to do your stuff for you, it has been very fruitful for them and for the frontline workers.
Very cool. So now we have arrived at our Q&A section of the webinar. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments and we can help answer those. Okay, a question that we have is, can an unmanaged solution be in production environment?
That is, I would say, like a taboo of sorts. So an unmanaged solution should not live anywhere except your development environment, and especially not in production. Like production is the last place you ever need to put an unmanaged solution. Everything in the production environment should be a managed solution. You can do hot fixes or test fixes within your test environment and then quickly update them into a managed solution build and then push that into your production. So the point is, the answer, no, it should never be in a production environment.
Another question we have is, what can we do if our users want new dashboards in Dynamics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in Dynamics, it gives you the ability to create your own views, and you can also create your own dashboards. So creating a dashboard is as simple as drag and drop, and you can create your own dashboard, personalize it to you. It's only going to be visible to you. But then we have a more advanced tool, which gives you much more analytics and much more detail. It's called Power BI. So if you wanted to create dashboards and reports out of your data and have a higher level of analytics, you would go and use a Power BI report or create a Power BI dashboard. And you can also like place your Power BI dashboard or report within your model-driven app that you create as well. So for analytics, it would be dashboards, which you can create very easily. And if you want to go in depth, it would be Power BI.
Okay, and one last question is, how do we enable Copilot in our Dynamics environment? Do we need any new licenses?
Yes, so Copilot by default is already present within your Dynamics applications if your license allows it. So if it's not showing up, then it means that your license does not allow it. In that case, you would need to have that subscription turned on for the Copilot itself. And as for Copilot Studio, that's a completely different licensing structure. It's like I think $200 per month to have it turned on within your tenant, and then you would need at least 2 or 3 Copilot Studio user licenses for people who would be creating and managing the Copilot. For usage of Copilot, you don't need a license. You can expose it to the public or you can expose it internally to your team. There is a capacity. It is about 25,000 messages generally and 12,500 generative AI messages, but that capacity can be purchased additionally.
Great. There's no more questions. Well, thank you so much for joining our Optimizing Your Microsoft Dynamics Ecosystem Tips, Tools, and Best Practices. In this webinar, we explored best practices, how to effectively utilize Power Platform, and strategy for maximizing usage, as well as demonstrate how Imperium Dynamics can serve as an extra helping hand to support your best practices with our co-managed services. By partnering with Imperium Dynamics, you gain access to innovative solutions that address these challenges head on. Thank you everyone so much for joining, and we hope to see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.